Chapter 21 deals with nutrition and digestion from an animal standpoint. Alright, so we're going to talk about how animals, what happens after you ingest it, what happens to the food after you ingest it, basically. Talk about the parts and functions of the human digestive system and delve into the world of nutrition. What's good for you, what's bad for you. Anyway, let's move on. Well, in the animal realm, there is one of three types of diets. Herbivores are exclusive plant eaters, and examples of herbivores are cattle, gorillas, sea urchins, and snails. Carnivores are exclusive meat eaters. Lions, tigers, and actually bears are actually omnivores. Whales are meat eaters, owls, hawks, and yes, the spider. Omnivores are plants and animals. Rats fall under that category. Roaches, bugs, humans. Anyway, you get the picture, I hope. Now, animals have different ways to ingest their food. Filter feeders, like mollusks, for example, they can filter out small things from water. Substrate feeders, a mold, well, it's not an animal, but they live in or on their food source and they eat their way through it. Fluid feeders, mosquitoes, aphids. Bulk feeders, and eat big pieces of food. That's us. We do our feeding in bulk. Alright, this is a filter feeder, a whale. It uses baleen. These plates are filter shrimp and other small crustaceans from the water. A caterpillar, for example, is a substrate feeder. A caterpillar is eating its way through the leaf and leaving its poop behind, as you can see here. The mosquito is the best example of a fluid feeder or an aphid on plants. And here we have the bird here eating a fish. And they eat that, well, birds don't have teeth, so he's going to swallow that thing whole. And that looks like a, I don't know what kind of fish that is. Can't tell you right off. Anyway, in the basics of food processing, we're going to look at 4 different stages, whether you're a kitty cat or a human. Ingestion is actually eating, taking, and chewing. Eating and chewing and swallowing. That is ingestion. Digestion is breaking the macromolecules into smaller subunits, monomers. Absorption is what happens in your small intestines when, after you've broken it, chewed it up, and it's acted upon by digestive enzymes in the stomach and the intestine. The nutrient molecules are small enough to be absorbed into the bloodstream. And this takes place chiefly in the small intestine. Elimination. What's not digested passes out through the anus. In other words, when you take a poop. Alright. And here, example here, the kitty eating his kitty chow. Eating, the actual eating, chewing, mechanical digesting, swallowing in the stomach and intestine, chemical digestion, hydrolysis is taking place. Big molecules into small molecules. In the small intestine, the lining of your small intestine, the epithelial, absorption, and then when the kitty goes to the litter box, pass out what wasn't digested. Okay. So, different molecules are digested by different enzymes. Proteins are broken down by different enzymes, series of different enzymes, and the end result is breaking everything down into smaller amino acids. There are a wide range of carbohydrate digesting enzymes to break polysaccharides down into disaccharides, and then different enzymes break the disaccharides into monosaccharides. There are enzymes to break down nucleic acids into nucleotides. Fats, different enzymes for breaking fats down. So proteins are digested by a series of enzymes into amino acids, carbohydrates, polysaccharides, and smaller saccharides, disaccharides, into monosaccharides. Nucleic acids are broken into nucleotides, fats into its components, glycerol and fatty acids. Chemical digestion is necessary for the macromolecules to be broken down into smaller subunits which can be acted upon by the body. So when you digest the macromolecules that you take in, break them down into smaller subunits inside your cells and other parts of the body, they'll be reassembled into what the body needs. They cannot be used directly in the form that you take in. All right. Digestion. Well, in sponges and protists, the food is engulfed by the cells into vacuoles, and then the vacuoles fuse with a lysosome. But animals use compartments. Flatworms and jellyfish have a gastrovascular cavity with a single opening, the mouth, which also serves as the anus in these organisms. The food enters through the mouth into the cavity. Enzymes are secreted, which do the digestion and the breakdown, and then other cells will absorb the nutrients, and then undigested materials go back out the way they came in. Simple as that. Not very efficient, but then again, for these organisms, it's fine. It's enough for them. Well, beginning with the nematodes and going on up the evolutionary ladder, animals have some type of alimentary canal. In other words, a complete digestive tract. One mouth is the opening to go into it, and the anus is what leaves which has not been digested. And as you move on up from nematodes, you start getting further specialization. The tube is broken down into compartments, especially with the earthworms. And each compartment has a job. All right. In earthworms, for example, when the food moves into a pharynx, then into the mouth, into the pharynx, then to esophagus, and then a crop. We don't have a crop, but that's where the food is softened and stored. Then a gizzard where it's actually ground, and then a stomach and to intestines, and then what's not digested up through the anus. All right, the hydra has a one-way track. Mouth is anus. Take the food internally into the gastrovascular cavity. There's no chewing going on, but enzymes are released, which break it down, and then nutrients are absorbed, and then what's not digested gets spit out. The earthworm has a complete digestive tract. Food goes into the pharynx, passes to a crop, the gizzard, and then through the intestine out the anus. Insects too have something similar to an earthworm digestive tract. But a bird even has a crop and a gizzard to break stuff down because they don't have teeth. The human digestive tract is very specialized and very efficient and effective. Food is ingested and chewed, mechanical digestion, by the teeth in the oral cavity. When we swallow, we push it into our throat, the pharynx, and then the pharynx, it's pushed along by a process, contraction, relaxation of smooth muscle called peristalsis. into the esophagus. Now, as the food moves into the esophagus, where the esophagus joins the stomach, is a valve called the cardiac sphincter. It opens and the food goes into the stomach. And then after the churning and mixing with gastric juices, where the stomach joins the small intestine, there's another valve called the pyloric sphincter, which opens when the stomach pushes the food into the small intestine. All right, and then we have digestion and nutrient absorption takes place in the small intestine. And what's not digested moves into the large intestine. Water is absorbed, and what's left is compacted into feces, which moved into the rectum, then finally out through the anus. And here's a diagram here. There are two valves, the cardiac sphincter and the pyloric sphincter. All right, mechanical digestion and chemical digestion, actually the breakdown of polysaccharides into disaccharides, begins in the mouth. And what happens, the chewing breaks the food into smaller pieces and increases surface area for exposure to enzymes. Then the food is swallowed. The tongue has taste buds, but a good deal of your taste is dependent on your sense of smell. Try tasting food when you have a head cold. You can't taste it because your nose is plugged up. You can't smell it. And it's essentially just mush. So the tongue tastes the food, shapes it into a bolus, and then you swallow that, mixes it with saliva too, softens it, then you swallow. Your salivary glands, there's 3 sets. They secrete saliva, which is a protein sugar mixture, which moistens and lubricates, contains enzymes, buffers to neutralize acids. Enzyme amylase, which breaks down starch into maltose. And then lysozyme, an enzyme that neutralizes bacteria. You have your teeth are divided into categories: incisors for cutting, canines for tearing, premolars and molars for grinding. All right. Now, it just so happens your pharynx is a passageway, not only for passage of food, but passage of air into the larynx, trachea, and the lungs. Now, what sets us up? How do we keep the food out of the larynx? Well, there's a covering. The larynx has a cover called an epiglottis. So when you swallow, that epiglottis covers the opening to the larynx, the glottis, and that keeps the food out of your lungs. So you don't get the food in. So when you swallow, the epiglottis covers this opening here. So the food goes into the esophagus and not down into the trachea. It's a reflex. Peristalsis is the process, waves of muscular contractions, which pushes the bolus into the stomach. What happens if you get food down the wrong pipe and you start choking? Heimlich maneuver. What you do is you take your fish and push it up into the diaphragm, and whatever air is in your lungs, it'll push the air out of the lungs into the trachea and push that offending object, prevent it from blocking. If it can save a life, you should know how to do that. All right. The stomach is a storage tank, essentially. It can hold up to 2 liters. There is the initiation of protein digestion begins in the stomach. The food is mixed with the protein digestion enzymes and hydrochloric acid. And that acid helps with breaking down protein and kills bacteria. Now, there is a protein digestive enzyme called pepsin. It is secreted in an inactive form, because if it was active form, it'd eat your stomach, literally. So once the pepsinogen, the inactive form, is into the stomach cavity, the HCl activates it, and then it works on the protein you have consumed and not the lining of your stomach. And it's a positive, what we call a positive feedback mechanism, the activation of pepsin. Well, what I mentioned to you, how come your stomach doesn't get digested? Well, the pepsin is secreted in inactive form. The mucus produced by mucus glands coats your stomach and actually prevents things from chewing on it. And your your stomach lining continuously is replacing itself through mitosis and cytokinesis. And this shows this lining of your stomach, what's in the interior epithelium, gastric pits. These are pits, and there are cells which secrete the materials for gastric juices. Pepsinogen is secreted into the stomach cavity, and then when it combines with HCl to produce pepsin. Alright, gastric glands are not secreted constantly. It can be turned on and turned off. It's a negative feedback mechanism. So when you're hungry and you see the goodies and you smell them, that's when you start secreting. And then as the food arrives, the stomach walls stretch. That triggers the release of a hormone called gastrin. And when you get full in your stomach and enough acid secreted, gastrin is shut off. And then your stomach churns, peristalsis, mixes the contents. And the mixture with the gastric juices forms a liquid called chyme. Now, the small intestine is named for its diameter, not its length. It's actually longer than the large intestine, but the large intestine has a larger diameter. And the acidic chyme moves into the small intestine. It's neutralized by bicarbonate secreted by the pancreas. And then other enzymes complete the chemical digestion. And then the nutrients are absorbed. The first part of the small intestine, the shortest part of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Well, digestive juices from the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas mix here. The pancreas secretes pancreatic juices, which is a mixture of digestive enzymes, and bicarbonate of soda, which neutralizes the acidic chyme. Liver produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder, unless you're missing one. The bile emulsifies fats. It breaks the fats, makes the droplets smaller. And the intestine also secreting other enzymes to complete digestion. So, the digestion that takes place, polysaccharides are broken down into monosaccharides. Amylase breaks polysaccharides into maltose and other disaccharides, and other enzymes break these disaccharides into monosaccharides. Polypeptides are broken down into smaller polypeptides and finally into amino acids. Nucleic acids are broken down into nucleotides, and other enzymes break the nucleotides apart into nitrogen bases, sugars, and phosphates. Fat globules, bile salts in the bile, break it down into smaller droplets. They're an enzyme from the pancreas called lipase, breaks it into component fatty acids and glycerol. Now, the small intestine has more surface area than you realize due to folds of the intestinal lining, and then finger-like projections called villi, and then on the surface of the epithelial cells are even microscopic projections called microvilli. So the small intestine has a lining like, to you, it would be like velvet, because all these folds are very small. So the finger-like projections are the villi, and they're lined with epithelium, and on the surface of the epithelial cells are the microvilli. Amino acids and sugars are absorbed into the blood, but fatty acids and glycerol go into the lymph and is transported by the lymphatic system. Alright, nutrients pass into epithelial cells by diffusion and active transport. Fatty acids and glycerol are absorbed by the intestinal cell, combined into fats, then receive a protein coat, and then into the lymphatic system. And other nutrients, amino acids and sugars, pass directly into the blood, and from there it'll go to the liver. Now, blood from the digestive tract passes through a special branch of the circulatory system called the hepatic portal system. Once the blood that drains the intestines has to pass through the liver first, and before going back to regular circulation. Now, the liver converts the glucose in the blood into glycogen as needed, and also can release sugars back into the blood when needed. Synthesizes many proteins, including blood clotting proteins and lipoproteins that transport fats and cholesterol. And also substances that are toxic can be converted into less toxic forms. And also the production of bile. The large intestine, also known as the colon, is shorter than the large intestine, but it's much larger in diameter. Where the small intestine joins the large intestine, there's a pouch called the cecum, where the appendix is attached. The large intestine has a population of E. coli. E. coli, which you don't digest, work on which you didn't digest, and produce B vitamins and vitamin K for blood clotting. You need that. So this is what we call a beneficial relationship between the E. coli and you. You give the E. coli a home, but they pay the rent, and for the most part don't make you sick. Alright, also feces are formed and the water is reabsorbed, and feces are formed. Alright. Diarrhea. When you don't absorb enough water because your stomach is upset, your colon is upset for whatever reason, that's why you get watery stools. Constipation is when the stools dry out. Not enough water in that. Alright. Length of the digestive tract correlates with type of diet. Plant eaters tend to have a longer gut, whereas carnivores tend to have a shorter gut. So length of the digest, alimentary, longer than herbivores and omnivores and shorter in carnivores. And what I mean is the length of the intestinal part. It's much shorter in carnivores than it is in herbivores, as you can see here. It's actually much more difficult to digest plant material than it is to break down meat. Alright. Nutrition. Alright. Basics of nutrition. Animals must have the building blocks to build their own macromolecules, must have energy to power their cells, and necessary nutrients, inorganic nutrients I'm talking about, to maintain health. Vitamins, minerals. You'll see why in a minute. Alright, cellular respiration is what converts energy in food into ATP. Carbohydrates are the main source of fuel, but fats and even proteins can be utilized. And the thing about fat is twice as much energy can be released from a gram of fat than from a gram of carbohydrate. So fat is a convenient way to store abundant amounts of energy while taking up less space. Alright, energy content of food is measured in calories. The physical definition of calorie is the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of a gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. But we use kilocalories. One food calorie is actually 1,000 calories, or 1 kilocalorie. So in other words, when you read a food label, you're counting calories, you're counting kilocalories is what you're doing. Alright. Rate of energy consumption by an animal is called metabolic rate. It's the sum of all energy requiring biochemical reactions over a given time frame. The basal metabolic rate is the energy a resting animal requires each day, just kicking back, not doing anything. To determine an animal's metabolic rate is you take the BMR plus the energy needed for physical activity, and that gives you the metabolic rate. Now, your body stores excess energy either as glycogen or fat, both actually. Alright, you go to McDonald's and you eat a cheeseburger, and that's 417 kilocalories. Alright, if you burn it off, you can burn it off in 32 minutes of jogging, or an hour of swimming, or almost 2 hours of walking. Pepperoni pizza, yum yum. Well, a non-diet soft drink gives you whole wheat bread. Now the thing about walking is it's less wear and tear on the body. Swimming is good. That's probably the best one for you. You burn calories and less wear and tear on the body. Jogging, yeah, jogging will get rid of the kilocalories fast, but man, wear and tear on those joints. I know, I jogged for a lot of years. I can tell you about it. Essential nutrients, those you have to take in, your body cannot manufacture. The categories are essential fatty acids. Those are fatty acids you need to take in from your diet. Your body does not produce them. Essential amino acids must be obtained from diet. Your body doesn't produce those. Good sources of essential amino acids are meat, eggs, milk, and cheese. Essential fatty acids, seed, grains, and vegetables. Alright, now the essential amino acids are all listed here. Sources, so you need multiple sources to get protein. Get these amino acids. You need multiple sources. Like vegans have to be careful. Now, essential vitamins and minerals necessary for metabolic functioning are small amounts but are necessary. Vitamins tend to be coenzymes. Your enzymes need them to do their job. They can be water soluble or fat soluble. Water soluble is there's almost no way you're going to overdose on them. Fat soluble you can, and large quantities are toxic to the body. Water soluble, they pass right through you. You can take multiple. You won't overdose on these, but the fat soluble, yes, you will. Minerals are just like iron, manganese, metal ions. Calcium and phosphorus, our skeleton needs those. Iron, iodine, sodium, potassium, chlorine, nerve functioning, muscle functioning. However, people tend to ingest more salts than they need. Alright, the government has this RDA, recommended daily allowance. It tells you the minimum amounts you need. It's determined by a scientific panel. Depends on who's paying them, what the recommendations are. Yeah. Overdoses of vitamins are like anything else, not good. Water soluble you can get rid of, but fat soluble can build up to toxic levels. Yes, they can poison you, so you don't overdo it. And I guess following the RDA is a good idea. That way at least you won't overdose. Food labels tell you how much is a correct serving, how many calories, selected nutrients, and recommendation for daily limits. So when you look at a label, you have the ingredients, and here's the nutrition facts. And we are done. Yay!